Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services in Eastland, Texas. Tune in every week as we share important information to help you and your family live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, legacy and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Welcome into Life Planning 101. My name is Angela Robinson with Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services out of the big town of Eastland, Texas, where we do all things life planning. Who knew you didn't have to be in a big city to do that? But I'm not going to knock a big city too bad today because we have a very special guest. Actually, somebody I think I've known pretty much the entire time I've been in the industry. He's been working with our office on and off, and really honored to reconnect with him and have him on our show today. As you may know, if you've been listening to our podcast this month, it is Long-Term Healthcare Awareness Month. And so we scared the bejeebers out of you a couple weeks ago with the dirty dozen of long-term healthcare stats, or at least I hope we did. And I thought, we probably need to get someone on here to talk about maybe dive a little deeper, but also provide some options out of a traditional state. Now, I am going to fully disclose anytime we have a guest, a vendor, a company on Life Planning 101, we are not recommending that on our show. We are hugely pro fans of everything should be holistic and customized. There should be no generic and in the box thinking. But I think this tool definitely warrants coming out of the box to be known about, so to speak. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Mr. Roger Cantu. He is the Regional Sales Director at OneAmerica, which years ago used to be the Golden Rule Company. I'm pretty sure my dad did business with you guys back then.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people listening to this podcast, Roger, may remember you from one of our Abilene workshops or our Fort Worth workshops years ago. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. We know you're very busy in what you do and joining us for this podcast.
Angela, I'm proud to be here. I really am. And I do remember working with Jim and making presentations. And if the listeners had attended one of those sessions, they may have seen me in the past present the material that I'm going to cover today. But we've certainly had an evolution, as you know, since then. So I'm thrilled to give everyone an update.
Absolutely. And we won't give you too much heck because you're from Plano, Texas. So at least you got that Texas check mark by your name. But no, I just, because it does seem like a long feat. Now I look at your picture, you don't look that old, but how long have you been involved in long-term care planning?
So I got started in 1990, which, for somebody who works in the financial and planning world, especially in the long-term care world at age 23, it's kind of unusual. But what makes it even more so is next April, I would have spent 35 years with the same set of solutions, the same presentation and products that I had made for Jim in the past with his group of clients. I'm still working with today. Big believer in it. I own the plan myself, and it's been 34 coming on 35 years.
Wow. And I will speak to this. I just had the honor of visiting your home office, as you know, a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. And one thing I've always loved about OneAmerica is y'all are a service first company. And I think it just speaks to your career history, because I'm looking through resumes these days. People like change jobs like it's flipping hotcakes. So mm-hmm. I think that's impressive. It speaks a lot, not only for you, but also for OneAmerica. So, I definitely, like I said, just honored to have you on today talking about what you guys do, because it is a consistency in a world that is not consistent. So appreciate that.
Right. Honored to be here and excited to share this information.
That's right. So speaking of non-consistency, long-term care planning, just to say the least, has changed just a little bit over the last few decades. Heck, a few decades ago, I think life expectancy was basically retirement, die in 5 years. So, yeah. So what have you seen that's just been a huge change, and how have you guys been handling that, or I should say moving through that?
Well, that's a great question, and a lot has changed. In fact, just to put in perspective for the listeners, at the 1900 mark versus the 2000 mark, the life expectancy at the turn of the century, before the Industrial Revolution, was 47. And
Mm,
at the 2000 mark, it's pushing 80. So we've increased our life expectancy. I mean, goodness, almost doubled in just 100 years. And, that's medical science and so forth. But that also means, of course, Angela, that by living longer, there's a greater need for assistance later in life. And when that goes beyond roughly 60 days, that is often designated as a long-term care event, right? That
right.
then would go on as long as the individual is alive. And the changes that have taken place over the last 3 decades in the insurance realm of long-term care planning is that we've moved from a kind of pay-as-you-go, use it or lose it style solution, which had sort of been the standard in the late 80s, early 90s. And it's shifted over to what's commonly referred to as an asset-based or linked-based combo. Sometimes they're referred to long-term care solution that has a more stable, predictable, and planned benefit that, there's very little guesswork. And we can expound on that. But if the listeners had experienced long-term care insurance where that premium perhaps went up over time, or they passed on that solution because they didn't see a benefit coming at the end of it, other than needing it for long-term care, then what we have to share should get their attention.
Right. Absolutely. And I think about that. I guess there's two sides to every coin. My heart bleeds for people when they don't do long-term health care planning. And I'm not just talking about the funding. Our listeners probably know that, but it really does, because I do believe that the industry itself, especially insurance industry, that use it or lose it mentality, or it's just so expensive. And then you don't really look at it for what it is, as an asset protection measure, not just for your generation, for the next generation. And the horrific stories that we've actually lived through with
Mhm.
people. Oh, it's just heartbreaking.
It is.
So I'd like to know from you, because I know OneAmerica has some good information on this, but what are y'all seeing that is making it so critical for retiring Americans to address this?
I think the biggest thing in my tenure, which again is 3 decades now, is the fact that Medicare has expressly got out of the long-term care business. I mean, it's always been that way. Medicare was designed for hospitalization, surgical, and medical expenses. But right there in the documentation, it says, Medicare is not designed to cover an outpatient chronic healthcare condition, and it will not. So why it's so critical is Americans are going into retirement with an out-of-pocket expense that most retirement plans can't handle. And this is going to impact the vast majority of retiring Americans that are out there. And it's sad to me that this is happening, but there's still an opportunity to put plans in place to protect not only the better part of your assets, but protect your spouse and your children against having to change their lifestyle at retirement, or fail to receive an inheritance because you haven't planned for this.
Absolutely. I think of it just like life insurance. You don't buy it because you love yourself. You
Right.
buy it because you
Right.
love someone else. And
That's it.
and you said it earlier, we're living longer, but not necessarily healthier. I guess we have a new focus on that in the United States right there, but we aren't going to go political. But
Mhm.
I think it's really important that people go in eyes wide open. So when we come back from the break, Roger, I look forward. I know you've got some statistics to go over with us, just to look at really, what does this cost? What could this cost someone in retirement? Or what are the odds of it happening to me? Because people always say it won't happen to me.
Right.
So when we come back right here on Life Planning 101, you're not going to want to miss it. Roger Cantu with One America, talking about long-term care solutions that are a little bit different from what you might be used to. Welcome back into Life Planning 101. My name is Angela Robinson with Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services. Be sure to visit us online, www.kennedy-financial.com. If you're not signed up for our weekly newsletter, you need to do that. We are going to have this particular podcast guest, as well as others, featured in there. You can go back and look at resources. Obviously, we coin an actual article each and every week that we know is relevant to the families that we're serving. So it's probably relevant to you, and you're not going to want to miss that either. But without further ado, I want to get back to the heart of the matter. We have a special guest, Roger Cantu from OneAmerica, and we have been talking, I guess, in full disclosure, honor of long-term healthcare awareness month, about some of the risks of, going into retirement without a long-term healthcare plan. And Roger, right before the break, you were talking about how critical this is. I'd like to know from you, everybody says it won't happen to me. What are the odds of someone retiring and needing long-term care after they retire?
So the odds have floated in the 68 to roughly 70% range, Angela, after
Ooh.
age 65. I mean, I know that may be shocking to the listeners, but in my 30 years, that really truly hasn't changed. It's, depending on the stats, varied, but that's a small variation. And this is, of course, after age 65. Now, if they retire before age 65, the chances are less, but after attaining age 65, it is roughly a 70% chance, or look at it in terms of 2 out of 3 will need some form of care before they pass. And for couples, the odds are that one of the couple will need long-term care. It's 96% chance that at least one of the two will need care.
Wow. So if you actually reverse those numbers, I don't know, if what your parents would have been like if you came home with a 4% on a test or a 30% on a test, but that'd be pretty
Right.
alarming, right?
Yes, it is.
So, that's very alarming. Okay, I have to ask right along with this, let's talk about cost, because yes, there's a chance of you needing it, but what does that mean? People say, well, I might just be able to handle that, or, that particular time, stay working, or just work longer, or da, da, da.
Yep. The costs pretty widely vary across the country, but I know many of your listeners are here in the state. So I'm going to focus my attention on the state of Texas. The average cost of care is $64,000 a year. Now, we all know that there's a huge rural segment of the state. So I've isolated some numbers down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we're just over $70,000 a year out of pocket as an average cost for care in DFW. And I can break that down further in brief. Home care is at about $63,000 a year. Assisted living is $62,000. And nursing home actually is a good bit more than the average at $74,000 out of pocket a year. And of course, those costs are always escalating, roughly at a 3.5% medical inflation rate.
And our experience is people always want to stay in their home as long as possible. That's
Mm-hmm.
usually a goal. And then, so that's 64,000 talks about the healthcare aspect. But what we've seen just, through experience has been, yes, there's the healthcare aspect, but then there's also someone coming in to clean. There's also someone coming in to cook. There's
Yep.
all these other things that stack on top of that. And oh, by the way, if there's another spouse still living, they still have to have their regular living expenses into that budget too.
That's it exactly. And that's why, being in this area and so focused on why it's such a risk exposure, yet so few people have put a plan in place. And that's the tragedy of it all.
It is. So, just thinking about this from a financial advice perspective, if I told a couple, okay, you're 65 years old, you want to have $60,000 a year of income, they had a healthy risk tolerance, could manage an 8% return over their life, we could plan on around $1.5 million supporting that. So in
Mhm.
other words, that could end up being what you need to save if you're going to self-fund this event, so to speak.
Yeah,
Whew, that's pretty rough.
it
Pretty
is.
rough.
I've
Oh,
seen
go.
retirement plans get decimated in relatively short order because of that exposure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially what if you go through a recession at the same time? We've seen that. It was
Hmm.
horrible. Oh 08 and oh 09, just awful. Watching someone having to spend out of pocket on top of the market just crumbling. It was horrible. Yeah, you can't pick your timing
That's right.
around an event like this. So here's another question though. Is any of this covered by Medicaid? Because people's always saying, well, I'll just go on Medicaid.
Yep. So there are two M programs we're all familiar with, Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare's, you buy into that with the numbers of hours you work in the US, and that's your retirement income, or excuse me, insurance. Whereas Medicaid is a welfare program. Now, Medicare will cover a grand total, Angela, of 20 days of skilled care, and that is only if you've had a 3 evening hospital stay leading up to that, right?
Woot,
And
woot.
if you manage to qualify for the 20 days, on the 21st day, you have a copayment. It's currently $204 a day. So from day 21 until day 100, each of those days, the first $204, every one of those days is out of pocket. And then Medicare will pick up the difference. And then on day 100, you've met your lifetime maximum reimbursement for Medicare. So you can see it's very meager when it comes
Right.
to Medicare.
Right. And Medicaid, for most of the people that we work with, that's just simply not an option unless you're willing to spend down your assets, do something extremely drastic. Trust me, I've been on the phone with Medicaid attorneys. Not a fun time. So,
You're right.
yes. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, we've talked about all this stuff that makes people's heads spin and maybe even a little sick to their stomach. I know you've got some solutions for us, Roger. So when we come back, let's look at those. What does OneAmerica have on the table with these quote unquote asset-based solutions that are a little bit different from the old use it or lose it policies? Welcome back into Life Planning 101, right here with Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services, where we are helping people live life on purpose. And what better way to live life on purpose than to cover your risks? And we've got Roger Cantu, Regional Sales Director with OneAmerica. Here, he's been sharing some incredible information. He's been in the industry for over 34 years, actually with the same company, I guess, as it kind of transitioned,
Yep.
and working with people to provide solutions for long-term health care plans, and not in the traditional fashion, not the old fashioned of use it or lose it policies, because I think that's where everybody says, well, it's too expensive, and if we never use it, we don't need it, I don't like it. So you mentioned these asset-based long-term care policies with OneAmerica. How do they work, Roger?
That's an excellent question. It's actually quite simple. It's a two-piece puzzle for the listeners. If you could visualize, there's two pieces to the puzzle. The first is truly that asset-based asset. It's something that you own. It's something that's going to be there no matter what. Its intention is to use it for long-term care. If not needed, it would pass on to your heirs as a death benefit. Now, that can either, depending on your age or health, could be a life insurance policy, or it could be an existing annuity. But either of those chassis are liquid and tax-free to be paid out while you're alive for care in your home or a facility, and that in relatively short order would exhaust. So that first piece of the puzzle is going to last for a couple years. The second piece of the puzzle is that truly long-term care benefit. And that is the safety net, what we call a continuation of benefits rider. A rider you're adding to that asset, to either the life piece of the policy or that annuity. And the rider, Angela, once the base contract, that first piece of the puzzle, exhausts, would kick in immediately and continue to pay out that same income stream potentially for the rest of their life. We're the only carrier who offers a lifetime benefit. And especially folks who are listening that have a Parkinson's or Alzheimer's in their family, there's a genetic component to that, that, it's worth maybe looking at a longer duration benefit, and lifetime unlimited benefits pretty long.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that's powerful. I think there was years ago that we used a lot of OneAmerica's product, and kind of slowed down. There was a lot of changes, and you guys have gone back, simplified the product. There's actually some pricing decreases, which is incredible. So, I personally think it is a top priority to be looking at your planning solutions. But you brought up something during the break that, there's one big issue that people have when it comes to long-term care expense, and planning for it. What is that, Roger?
So the challenge that I see, this is me personally, is that folks think long-term care, protection, or planning, or whatever you want to call it, is an old person's game. And it's not. This is insurance. It's not an investment. So unfortunately, people wait a bit too long, right? And their health dossier builds. Now, I don't want your listeners to underwrite themselves. Oh, I have high blood pressure. Oh, I have cholesterol, right?
Yeah.
And say, oh, I can't get that. Please don't do that. You need to reach out to Angela and her team and see where your health fits in, because depending on that, health will depend on the solution that's available to you, but it can address many individuals, this asset-based approach. But why haven't more people planned for this is the challenge that I'm faced with daily. And that is that they are, verbally told that they can pay for it themselves, that they have enough money that they can self-fund, or they're just simply not aware that this is a financial exposure at retirement. It's one or the other. And if either of those are, part of your past, I can assure you that long-term care is a great risk with large odds of it occurring in your lifetime and a pretty substantial expense. And that if you've been given by your advisor that this is a self-funding opportunity, well, you could also self-fund your homeowner's insurance policy and just set aside money. But who would do that?
I've actually seen someone do that, Roger.
Is that right?
Yes. But obviously it's a wrong question for them. But most people, I would assume they would want to insure that home.
Yes. And the challenge here is the day of reckoning is coming when it comes to long-term care. There are 68 million baby boomers, those folks born between 1946 and 64. There were 74 million of them, and after attrition, which is a nice way of saying those that have passed, we still have the third largest segment of the U.S. population. And in 2026, just 15 months away, they begin to turn age 80. And when that happens, it'll happen every day. 9,000 will turn age 80 every day thereafter. The bugaboo there is that that's the average age in which a male requires long-term care in the U.S. So we're within 15 months away from having a wave of individuals requiring care. Few have had any kind of protection. So now's the time to pursue this to a greater extent. And because you're an advisor who's dedicated a podcast to this subject, it's clear to me you making it a priority where others, unfortunately, in the advising world haven't.
Yeah, well, we definitely are, because, just like you said, there's a wave. And what I do know very well is supply and demand and what that does to the price of things. So I think self-funding, if that's your plan, you definitely need to have a plan. You don't just need to say, I'm going to self-fund. You need to have it written, and you need to have the assets set aside. If you decide that's too expensive, because we forget to look at that aspect, then maybe you need to be looking at insuring that expense.
Correct.
So, Roger, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. It's just so awesome to be working with you again. We truly appreciate all you do. We truly appreciate OneAmerica. And by the way, we've had clients go on claim under this company. Like I said, we're not married to anybody, and this is not a specific recommendation for a specific company or a specific instance, but you guys have done a great job, and we truly appreciate the partnership that you've provided to provide solutions for the families we serve.
Angela, I'm happy to do it. I'm thrilled to be working with you as well, and I'm looking forward to the folks that are listening that haven't put a plan in place, to have you and I counsel them on maybe what's the best solution. And remember, folks, something's better than nothing. Even if you're not fully funding the cost of care, if you have an adequate amount set aside to be able to cover this and have it last for as long as you can, that's enough. And it may be a godsend to your family.
Absolutely. God bless you, Roger. God bless all of our listeners. And be sure to join us next week right here on Life Planning 101, Black and White Money Management. Will top off the month and give us insights into what is going on post-election with the markets and the economy. You're not going to want to miss it.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services. If you have questions, you can email them to lifeplanning@kennedy-financial.com. Don't forget to learn how our sister company can assist you with all of your tax and consulting needs. You can find out more at briscoeandassociates.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more Life Planning 101. The opinions expressed herein are those of the firm and are subject to change without notice. The opinions referenced are as of the date of publication and are subject to change due to changes in the market or economic conditions and may not necessarily come to pass. Any opinions, projections, or forward-looking statements expressed herein are solely those of the author, may differ from the views or opinions expressed by other areas of the firm, and are only for general informational purposes as of the date indicated. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Smart Money Group LLC. Kennedy Financial Services and Smart Money Group LLC are separate entities and are not owned or controlled by Calton & Associates Incorporated.